Yeah, so let's get on with someone else who has been a huge help with getting this together, especially when it comes to our media outreach and also with calming me down when I am screaming into the void about this project. You may have seen an article come out, I think yesterday or the day before, from Input Magazine about ACNH Fringe and as well as some other media outreach. That is the work of the fabulous writer, editor, journalist, occasional hapless PR person to people like me. Who Marisa, and I'm gonna try and get your last name right. Wikramanayake.
Yes!
Yes! Yes! Finally, we did it. Change has been made on Animal Crossing. So this is Marisa's first go at Fringe. It's very exciting. This is an experiment. It's the first Fringe Festival in Animal Crossing. This is my first time live streaming anything really, and so we're happy to support people doing first times for anything. So let me find out. Okay, Marisa wrote an intro to their piece, and I'm trying to read my own messy handwriting. I wrote all of this at like close to midnight 2 nights ago. Marisa nearly tried to move to Melbourne twice, find out how the third time was a charm, and the kangaroos, friends, and all sorts of random trees down in Nullarbor. How do they all get into this? And I know that's a terrible butchering of your. I went from butchering your name to butchering your intro, but find out more. And this time I'll do my magic trick again. And Marisa was also our first ever promo live stream guest, so that was pretty special. Yay! And now
there's a magic trick?
Yeah, I've become you. Ta-da!
What? Oh my god.
All right, take it away, Marisa.
Oh, that is the best magic trick ever. So I want to say we're on Kulin land, but this story is going to go across Wajik Nuna as well, and probably a few other countries, and the usual stuff about we are on land that has never been ceded and we are part of a colony. Can we do something about that, please? And my respect to our traditional owners, past, present, and the emerging people in the future. So this is not a love story, I think, though perhaps it could be, because if anybody knows me, they know that I don't do love in the usual way. You know how sometimes you look back and then you start to see patterns in the things that have happened to you. So this is a story about me turning up in Nam on Kulin land, and for those joining us from elsewhere who are only familiar with the colonial terms, I'm talking about Melbourne and Victoria in Australia. So, because first and foremost, I didn't want to come to Melbourne. It took me 3 tries. I should also preface this by saying this isn't your typical migrant story. Like, I don't do those. And also, that's not my experience. I have a lot of privilege and I'm very lucky. So let's go back to the Cure's Friday I'm in Love. There may be some bad singing in this. It's been a while since I went to choir. It's been about 20 odd years. It's an Aussie winter in 1993. There's a car driving up the coast from Melbourne to Sydney. There's a kid about 10 years old in the back seat counting down the hours by waiting for this new hit song to turn up every hour on the radio with the very important job of navigation. They don't know why anyone has decided to do this drive, except that this is just part and parcel of their father's flavor of strange. And also, nobody else can read a map at this point in the car. So this is a very important job. But this is fine. And they discover both the Cure and Yotu Yindi on this trip. But somewhere they also know that this is all because their parents are worried that the civil war back home in Sri Lanka will one day force them all to move. And they are here for a holiday, but also to see if they can get a visa to move over here. It ends up being like some weird sort of like, escape route, let's say. And I don't know how we manage it, but for years we managed to keep this escape route open for the possibility that, oh, things might get too bad enough for us to move, which is, this is where the privilege and the luck comes in, as you can see, because like who else gets to kind of do this sort of thing. Um, somewhere they also know that Australia supposedly has a summer too. But as far as they can tell at 10 years old, it's all stinks heavy cloud, but instead of no rain, there's lots of rain and wet and cold and miserable. There's a there's a cassette tape collection. You know, the sort that people try to confuse Gen Z with by giving it to them with a pencil and asking them to, do you know what you do here? Has anyone seen that meme go around? And this is a collection that my father had that I grew up with. There was a strange Scottish band on it called Fairground Attraction. Ooh, someone stood up. I assume they knew that what Fairground Attraction is. And a song called Find My Love that was a really, really big hit back in the 80s. This should tell you a lot about like my taste in music and how daggy I am. There's a teenager in Colombo in 1998 thinking about this song that came out in the 80s, knowing that probably very few other teenagers their age know about it. They know that they are expected to go overseas for university. Others expect them to come back home afterwards, but that ain't happening. You know, in school, we learn in biology the easiest way to teach people how an enzyme works is to like draw a circle with a funny shape in the middle of it, cut out of it, and then another shape somehow fits that magically. And it's like, see, protein and enzyme, they have to fit together for everything to work. But unlike an enzyme, there's no shape in Sri Lankan society for this teenager to fit into. So there's something prophetic in this song. There's a part of it that goes somewhere out there, there must be a boy for this girl. Could be anywhere, could be next door on the other side of the world. We'll come back to that in a minute. It's 2003. Better Than Jake's crazy, fast paced I Think I Love You has been out for years. I don't even know when it came out. At the time, people were doing MP3s, right? This was the height of MP3s. People would put them together like a mixtape or a mix CD, burn them onto CDs and give them to each other. And someone gave it to me. And I kept listening to it. But it's the same speed. The song goes so fast. It's the same speed at which I'm dropping out of university in the US for mental health reasons, disappointing all the relatives so much because they had plans for how great I would be, even though instinct told me that this was not where I should be, that contorting myself to fit would not work. Not my enzyme, not my protein. My father and I then fly to Melbourne, just barely missing winter, but it's there. It's on the edge. It's there enough for you to feel it nipping at you. I applied to Monash for archaeology, and I would have loved to go, you know, but like when I went around Melbourne looking at all these campuses for their like visiting days and things, I was not convinced. In the middle of orientation week, the few university campuses I have been to, they were all empty. All I could see was big, giant concrete blocks, few trees, some people. I was like, this is university? Like, what is happening here? I do not understand. So in February 2004, I didn't end up in Melbourne. So if anyone is paying attention, this was the first actual proper try, right, for me to try and go to Melbourne. But I ended up in Perth on what is Wajak Noongar land. Monash's letter ended up coming too late, and I opted for Notre Dame in Fremantle at the port, which, by the way, made me realize that I am a port city type of girl. Don't ask me why, I just don't know why, but like there's something. I'm blaming it on my mixed Dutch heritage because they were all bloody sailors who should have just stayed at home and grown tulips instead. But no. They actually did grow tulips. I'm not kidding about that. There's actually like a relative who came from a tulip farming background. But a lot of them were merchants and things. And anyway, I digress. They should have just all stayed at home instead of trying to colonize the bloody world and make my life difficult. All right. Not very forward thinking people, as you can see. I went out for walks at 2 in the morning and chatted to the people awake at the time who came from across the world too. It's never a white Australian who's awake at 2 in the morning, let me tell you. It's always all sorts of other people. It's people who are like taxi drivers sitting at the 24-hour diner. It's people working at the newsagent. We used to upend milk crates and sit on the pavement outside because, they come from a country where they're used to, the culture is like you sit on the pavement and you take part in life because life happens on the street, right? So it was so much fun to just sit there and chat for like hours in the middle of the night about all the philosophical things in life. It was so wonderful. And we didn't really know each other that well. My main person that I used to talk to at the newsagent was a guy from Iran, for example. And he had come as a refugee, and we sat there, we would talk about politics and all sorts of other things, and yeah, it was amazing. And we would break into bits of each other's of different languages, and even if we didn't understand or know the language, we understood what people were trying to say, and it was brilliant. It's so cool. But I also sat on the piers and I looked at the Indian Ocean that I grew up with. And these were all very strangely comforting to me in a lot of ways. And I was learning a lot about what kept me going. In 2007, I then become a citizen, which has never felt right to me. And it's an entirely other story we will not get into now. But at the ceremony, a band played sailing songs. And everyone else enjoyed the myth making of what it means to be an Australian. But when you listen to these sailing songs, I mean, at first you think, oh, white sailors singing about going across the world, etc. But when you listen to them, like merry beats and all, but these are actually laments about how people were forced to be pulled apart from each other and never ever to see each other again. Like kids never seeing parents and people never seeing partners because they're forced to sail across the world 10,000 miles away, is one song. It's very sad. There's a lot of sadness behind what makes Australia Australia. It's many years later then, after this, and my then partner, a very beautiful boy with a mop of curly hair, shy and prone to curling up in his brain, away from the world, wants to go to Melbourne, desperate to find work in a field he does not like, to please his mother. Now, he's a white Australian country boy. I wonder how it is that I, as the Asian person, am not the one with this sort of career pressure. It was quite amusing, but also sad. Go, I say. Instinct tells me that there is unfinished business in Perth. I can't go yet, even though I have little to no work too, and no one in the little England from several decades ago that is Perth wants to hire a non-Caucasian journalist who sticks their head above the parapet. And I suspect this to be true in the rest of Australia as well. I have other reasons why, but I say I won't go with him. But I know he will be happier there, and I know you can't keep love. You can't tether it to you with a ring either. You just love, and that's it. But what I say is a laundry list of projects that aren't done yet, because sometimes people want answers and you have to give them answers. All of them I could have done from anywhere, but I can't tell him that it is instinct here that tells me, no, you can't go to Melbourne. It's not yet time. Which, I usually operate with logic. But there are times when I really do have to listen to instinct, and it has always served me well. We break up eventually in what is a bumper year for me, as my father, with his usual flawless, absolutely flawless sense of timing, decides that the end of the year is the best time to drop dead. I mean, like, gee, thanks, Dad. Like, In the years preceding, he and I have crisscrossed parts of Australia. Remember the weird driving nonsense from Melbourne to Sydney? Why does anyone want to drive from Melbourne to Sydney? Like, I would love to do it now as a road trip, but like at the time with two young kids on a holiday. Why? Why didn't you just fly? Oh my God, why? Do you know how hard it is to find a McDonald's or a Chinese restaurant because those are the only two things your sister eats? Like, there aren't that many options. The rest of us want to actually experience a country's cuisine, but no. So, yeah, in the years preceding, he and I have crisscrossed parts of Australia in this sort of weird father child bonding tradition because as we grew older, we were the only two people patient and keen enough to do such cross country drives with each other. My sister and my mother would just go, nah, we're going shopping instead. See you, bye. We also share the same taste in music, which helps. His clumsiness has led him to get us stuck on an island south of Tasmania, get us drenched by the Southern Ocean, leave us shanghaied on Christmas Day with no food, break hotel door handles. I mean, like we really thought we were on the hook for that one. He just touched it. He touched it and it broke in his hand. And then he went, oh, it broke. And I was just like, what is this? Oh my God. You name it. And it's all done to the soundtrack of the Traveling Wilburys. So, I was quite used to this. In August 2017, yet again in the middle of winter, why? Why is it always in the middle of winter? Can't anyone do anything in the summer when I'm actually used to the warmth? No, always winter. Why? My latest partner pops up with a query. Something in me, just prior to this, has been telling me that after 13 odd years in Perth, it's time to move again to the next phase of my life because nothing's working in Perth. See, aforementioned, Little England comment. Part of me has been debating whether that means leaving Australia because, I have gone around Australia a little bit, not to live, but to visit. And from what I see, it's much the same everywhere else. So is it time to leave Australia and try your luck elsewhere? So girls got to work, girls got to eat, cat has to be fed. I have got the job in Melbourne, he says. Do you want to move in with me? Wait a minute, like first you have to move to Melbourne, then you have to move in. Like that's two big steps in one. But I wonder if this is now a theme in my life. Everyone I date running off to the bright lights of Melbourne only to find that it is much the same as everywhere else. I mean, I could have told you that for free, but nobody will listen to me. They have to go and find out for themselves. In geography, they tell you that this is the bright light syndrome. Oh my God, never have I seen such a well set out example of it as I have seen here. Oh my God. A few months into us dating, despite being extremely ill, he had flown with me at his own expense to a book launch in Melbourne that I had to go be part of. Again, why? But like people don't understand that you can do things online from a distance. But anyway, he had let me practice driving with his car as well, which like sounds like such a small thing and such an obvious thing for a partner to do for their partner. But my parents hadn't done it for me, though, extenuating circumstances with civil war. And also none of my other partners had done this for me. So this is massive for me. And we had gone on road trips together. So I said to him, I've said like obviously he does things for me and like he's gone out of his way to do stuff for me that nobody else has ever done. And, maybe I should consider this. So I say, give me 6 months because like you need to go now, but give me 6 months. I said, I didn't tell him how sure or unsure I was. I didn't tell him about my instinct that I would have to move soon anyway from Perth. So maybe this was perfect timing. I didn't tell him any of that because he's a die-hard romantic and he's the kind of person. I mean, like usually they think, oh, girls plan their weddings and all of that sort of stuff. And no, that's not me. That's him. He had decided to drive across the Nullarbor because like he had spent 2 weeks packing up everything and shipping it across. And then he had 1 week to get to his job. And he decided he had to take the car. So he decided to drive across the Nullarbor over a week in winter with gale force winds and rain. Again, why the fascination with winter? I don't understand. Go in the summer. I agreed that it would be an adventure because, why not? I mean, I say all these things about like why at this time, etc. But then I'm also the person that says, okay, why not? Right? So I packed the bag and waited on the day that we were supposed to leave. And waited and waited and waited for 5 hours. Oh my god. He had been panicking about packing up the remnants of his life into the car, right? And had left behind family heirlooms for mops and brooms because apparently, he has to take 5 hours to think about this because apparently they don't sell mops and brooms in Melbourne. Didn't you know? I did not know that. Did you know that? I did not know that. In our network of friends now, this combined network of friends between him and me, this is known as doing a Hobbsy or having a Hobbsy moment because he's notorious for this. There are times when I think my father is trolling me from beyond the grave. Once he finally showed up, I was exasperated and mad. I took the wheel, and one thing you should know about me is that I drive well, but I also don't care two hoots about dying, right? Civil War stuff, okay? So if you have made me mad and are worried about all the usual dangers of driving in the Australian outback, including road trains, those are massive, massive trucks for the non-Australians, and kangaroos and camels, and I am driving, I don't have any sympathy for you. You can sit in the passenger seat and pray to your God that you don't die. I don't care if we go off a cliff, okay? The trip was an entire week of Hobbsy moments. He had not planned time-wise for breaks and stops, and so we were always turning up late to our accommodation. Like 2 a.m. we got to Kalgoorlie, okay? It was always after midnight. He had shipped all his clothes over, and so in the height of winter, he opens the trunk and finds that he only had some summer clothing to wear. I mean, I had packed my bag. I wasn't sharing. He had jam-packed the car full of stuff, and his alarm clock started ringing in the back seat, buried in a box under the mops and brooms. And I was quite ready to drive 7 hours to Kalgoorlie with it ringing just to spite him for standing me up for 5 hours, but I took pity on him. We listened to dance music on that trip. I went out of range for 3 days, and though I had warned people I would not be contactable, my squad, we are called the Y-Men, after X-Men, because they're all X-Men fans or Marvel fans or some such thing. I don't know. I just tag along, okay? Right? My squad on WhatsApp flooded the chat with anxious messages, including the absolute gem that was, Mari said there would be kangas. Look, they're huge, okay? Someone Google it. Do kangas eat people? I haven't heard from her. I'm worried. Are they okay? So I stood on red soil once I got that message and thought about where I was and why and what had my life come to, that my friends were WhatsApping me, asking me whether kangaroos eat people, because I had not been in contact for 3 days. When we got into Melbourne, we saw kangaroos, we saw road trucks, yes. But like when we got into Melbourne, we only had a couple of hours left before I had to get on a flight back to Perth. And it was one of those flights where you had to walk out onto the tarmac. And as I did so and climbed the stairs, instinct kicked in again. Like it popped up and said, hello, I have a very important message regarding the rest of your life. Please listen. In all the romance movies, this is where someone runs off the plane, right? I did not. I am not the romance person in this partnership. I'm sure he would have run off the plane, and then I would have scolded him if our roles had been reversed. I would have been, get back on that damn flight. Mind you, he would have loved it. He would have loved it if I'd run off the plane. That's his jam, right? He inhales everything Hallmark and Hollywoodish, and then tries to perpetuate it onto me, and I am not receptive whatsoever. But I knew then that winter or not, Hobbsy moments or not, I needed to now move to Melbourne for work, for him, but mostly also for me. I just needed to go. Perth was over for now. It's just done. So I got on that plane, and then I still didn't tell him. And then I shipped everything across. And then I finally told him. And then on Valentine's Day 2018, his Valentine's Day present was me moving to Melbourne. Because I said, okay, look, that's enough. Okay, right, I'm coming. Isn't that romantic enough for you? And of course, there was a very, very Hobbsy moment because he came to pick me up. Right? And by this point, he's been in Melbourne for 6 months. And he got lost on his way home from the airport with both me and the cat, who had not been fed for 8 hours because she had to come on a flight and there were restrictions on that stuff. And we are both hungry and tired, and it's late at night, and you're driving for hours and hours and still not getting home to our new home. And I felt somewhere in the back of me, I mean, at the time it was horrible, and afterwards I had to laugh about it because I thought to myself, well, my father's never met Hobbsy, but maybe this is his way of saying that he approves of him, because they're both the same level of daftness. And that whole thing about, oh, you'll find someone who's just like your father is so true. So true. Why? And teenage me was right. That song was prophetic. Somewhere out there must be a boy for this girl. Could be anywhere, could be next door on the other side of the world. Hobbsy is the first one I felt that about, that could relate to. Not that that means anything. That's just in my own head. But maybe that's romantic enough for him. And that's my story. My love letter to my dad, who I miss very much. And maybe that's partly why I date Hobbsy, because he reminds me of him and it's one way to keep him alive. And my love story full of exasperation with Andrew, who is also coming up very shortly. Thank you.
That was beautiful.
Yay! Oh, that was so sweet.
Sorry for going over time. I was trying to be pretty.
Yeah, that's all right. Indeed.